Okay, we're here with Mark.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Fine. So you're here in Leuven for a concert of Chameleons Vox.
Yeah.
And you're playing a complete album, script of the bridge.
Yes.
So how is the tour doing right now?
It's been going really well overall. As I was saying earlier, I'm kind of surprised at the reaction that we're getting for this, considering how old the record is. It began because we were asked to play this at a festival in Manchester that's going to happen next week.
The Academy?
Yeah, the Academy, with the Wedding Present and Ned's Atomic Dustbin. They're doing their albums. And so we agreed to do that, and then the agent said, well, we're getting asked if you'll do it here, there and everywhere. So that's how it came about, really. I was really surprised.
By the interest,
so much interest in it. Yeah, it was, yeah, it really was.
And was it some sort of challenge to play these old songs?
It has been, yeah, but I mean, the good thing about it is that the band that I'm playing with are very familiar with it, that they were very influenced by it in their own music, you know, in their own musical kind of history. It was a very big record for them. They all loved it.
Who's in the band right now besides John?
Well, Yves Altana, who I've been working with on and off for the past 15 years, who you just met, he's come in really to produce some new stuff that I'm trying to record. When John got injured, Yves said, well, I'll do it for you, because I know it all. You know, we didn't have, it was very last minute, and we didn't want to take weeks out rehearsing with anyone else. So Yves said, well, you know, I can do that. So he's not actually a drummer playing drums, he's a guitar player, but he does it very well. Chris Oliver, who's been involved since the beginning. Yeah. And Neil Dwerrihouse, who I worked with back in the Sons of God days in the 90s. Yeah. He's taken on the role of Dave.
And are you trying really to emulate, or
we are now?
Yeah.
Initially
for this tour.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for the last year or so, or last couple of years rather, we thought, when we first started with the Vox, it wasn't that. That wasn't really the point of what we were trying to do.
It wasn't nostalgia.
No, we weren't trying to emulate the sound. We just wanted to play the songs, and I wanted people to bring their own interpretation to it. You know, and it gave the whole thing a kind of edgier, more rock and roll kind of feel to it, which I liked. But then as things kind of like mushroomed, and we started playing bigger stages and things, and people, you know, were responding to it very positively. We kind of felt that if we were going to play this stuff, then we ought to really play it how it was written. So it kind of developed into a more, you know, wanting to do it a bit more authentically. You know.
And if we go back in time to '83, so when you recorded it, do you remember in the mood that you were at that time?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good time. I think it's probably like the best time. I mean, you know, we weren't phased by. We'd just been kicked off CBS because we wouldn't work with any of the producers that they wanted to work with, because all the producers at the time, they all wanted to edit the songs down, and they didn't seem to get what we were trying to do. So it didn't work. So CBS in the end, they sacked us. So, you know, but we weren't really depressed by that at all. We were very sure of ourselves and what we wanted to do with the record, you know, with the music.
You didn't want to sound like anybody else.
We definitely didn't want to sound. I mean, that was like, you know, right from the word go. You know, there was a lot of records around that we liked, but we tend to kind of, if there was anything about what we were doing that hinted at that, or what was going on, then we deliberately like not use it or not do it, because we didn't want to sound like it. That was the whole point of Chameleons, was that, you know, we had nothing really. We had a lot of influences. All our influences all our influences were 60s and 70s influences, with a little bit of punk thing that came from me, really, because I was the most into punk out of all of us, I think.
The influence was more psychedelia and the Doors.
Yeah, well, we all brought different things to it, because I was like very into. I was like really into like T-Rex and bands like that, and David Bowie and stuff like that, which was shared. And Reg and Dave were like very. I think their favourite band was The Who. and there was obviously Beatles and stuff like that, and we had then John, who was completely different from all of us. He was like into Genesis and things like that.
Yeah.
So we all brought these different things to it, you know. And I was to say that the late 70s punk thing was a big influence, but
more for the attitude,
more for the attitude and the sound,
for the energy.
Yeah, well, definitely I'd say the attitude for sure. But in a contemporary sense, we tried to avoid sounding like what was going on around us, you know. We just seemed to kind of like find a niche of our own, you know. But yeah, I mean, it was the best time really for the band, because everyone was getting on really well. It was our first record and our first album, so it was exciting, and there was lots of ideas floating around, and it was in a place that we recorded it in a studio that we were familiar with an engineer that we were familiar with. So you know, all those things kind of came together. It's just like, well, it's still my favourite album, you know, that we did.
Yeah, it's like a collection of hits. I mean,
yeah. Well, at the time, you know, we couldn't get arrested. I mean, I don't think we got a single good review for it. The press hated us. They didn't get it. They didn't understand it. It wasn't really, you know, until it got released through college radio. It started getting played on college radio in America. But even that was like messed up, because they released an edited version of the record. You know, they took tracks off it and they rearranged the order of it, and so that it was on MCA Records, and it wasn't really. It did more on import. You know, it was a big record for us on import. So in America, and that's when it started to kind of really.
Did you do a John Peel session?
Yeah, we started on John Peel. John Peel gave us our break. And he'd play us on the Forces radio here on mainland Europe, out of Germany, which kind of got us an audience here. You know, we were really surprised. I remember the first time we came to the mainland, the reaction we got, we didn't expect it. We couldn't really figure it out until we realised it was John playing us on the Forces radio.
AFN.
British Forces radio.
No, American Forces Network, AFN or something like that.
Yeah. He syndicated.
Yeah.
He syndicated the show. And then, but people would, you know, they'd listen to, they'd get the BBC out there on these like big radios, and so I mean that was like, you know, it was down to John that we got a start, you know.
Would you say it's a concept album, or?
Not really. It wasn't meant as a concept album. There was no kind of overriding theme to it.
The script of the bridge. What is that? Is it a riff?
It was just something. You know, it was just one of those like nonsense things that someone said one night. We were out tripping one night, and somebody said it, and we all started laughing, and I wrote it down. So when it came to naming the record, it stuck in my mind, and everybody liked it, so it stuck. But there was no overall concept to it, really.
Let's talk about Second Skin, which is one of my favorite songs ever. So I'm probably not the only one.
It's a popular song.
Yeah, I've always asked myself the real topic of the song. I've read many things about the immortality of movie stars.
Well, that's how it started.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of the idea. Was like because the demo came out on something, and the lyrics are slightly different, and because that's how it started. I was very intrigued by the idea of immortality captured on celluloid. You know, these people, these great movie stars, for example, who's like at the peak of their lives, the peak of their talent, were captured forever.
Yeah.
And in your mind, you always, you know, it was kind of an immortality. And then it evolved from that after I started reading a lot of literature about people who had died.
Our near-death experiences.
The near-death experience, yeah. And so it kind of like coalesced.
Is it the second skin, the skin that you take when you go out?
I don't really know, because that's something that when I was actually doing the recording, I spontaneously put those lines in. They just spontaneously happened. I can't really remember what my chain of thought was at the time. I remember you know, I just said like, okay, I just said like, you know, drop me in again because there's something I want to do at the end. And so they did, and nobody had heard it, you know, and I just got it in my head. So I'm not really sure where that came from. I can't remember what my chain of thought was at the time.
Yeah, I thought it was the idea that when you go out of your body and you
yeah, probably was.
Something like that.
Yeah, it probably was.
Float on air.
It probably was. Yeah, it was probably the idea that, you know, you become a spirit. You're transcending one kind of existence for another. Yeah. You know, it could have been along those lines, but I can't actually say for sure because I don't remember.
Okay.